Development Management meeting this afternoon. For the purposes of all members, we are slightly short on the microphones, so everybody's going to have to speak up. For guests that are speaking today, you do have a microphone, and I believe there will be a roving microphone in case something goes wrong with that. But I do ask you all to speak up clearly so that everybody can hear. I have a few announcements, never too sure why I need to do this, but the meeting is being remotely put out, so please speak clearly when you do. All speakers are asked to ensure that they speak up so microphones on the screens can pick up what everybody says in the room and online. I assume, I don't know why I'm saying this, I really don't remember. I assume you've read the papers. I sincerely hope you have, because you should be here if you haven't. It's quite simple. Please do not share any presentations on screen until the item commences. Well, that applies to the staff, so it's not an issue. Apologies. I have apologies from 3 members: Councillor Hall, Slade, and Whitton Love. Are there any others?
We've got Councillor Hellier joining us.
Councillor Linda Hellier online. Welcome, Linda. Declarations of interest, members. Just to remind you that if you have any, please inform us at the appropriate time. Minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of February have previously been circulated, members. Is it your wish that I sign them as a true and accurate record?
So moved, Chair.
All in favour? Thank you so much. There are no items requiring urgent attention, so we will actually therefore move to the first item on the agenda, item 5, and this relates to the Waste District, provision of temporary construction, demolition, excavation works, etc. And Andy Hill is just going to give a brief summary of what's there and take us through it. Andy?
Yeah, he's slightly on the brief, Chair. I'm just trying to get the presentation on the screen. There's not much in it.
Can you hear at the back? Right, take us on. Right. Yes, members should probably be aware this is a pretty complex and contentious application, so I'll spend a few minutes just taking you through the proposals and then on a virtual site visit with the aid of photographs. So just to put the site in a location for you, the application site is the area hatched red in the centre of the plan, to the south of Alphington and Exeter, adjacent to the junction of the A379 with the A38. You see Shilling for St George just to the west and Kenford just to the south. Just to put in context in terms of designations, which are referred to in the report, the application site is shaded there red in the centre. The land colour blue to the north is the Peamore Richard Park and Garden, again that's referred to in the report. The area coloured yellow is land allocated in the emerging Teambridge local plan under its policy EE2, comprising land on both sides of the A379, and also shown is the network of local public rights of way. The green line running across immediately to the north of the application site is a public bridleway. The links to the western end to a green lane dropping down to Shilling at St George. And the purple lines are public footpaths, including one running down the western side of the site, down to Lower Brenton Farm, where it joins another path then that runs through the southeast of the site. The site itself is in 2 areas, each occupying a valley. The northern valley would contain 2 phases of landfill. The southern valley would have the third phase of the landfill. And then you can make out a pink area there, which is the site office and recycling area, with vehicular access obtained from the southeast of Brenton Road. And I'll have more detail on that as we go through. So phase one is the western part of that valley. Moving through to phase two, the eastern part, with phase one being restored behind it. Moving through then to phase three of the landfill, which wraps around the recycling area. And then finally, the whole site restored back to agricultural use. One feature on here I would point out is the eastern flanks of both areas. You'll notice the contours are much closer together, denoting that flank will be much steeper than the remainder of the field area. And again, this is an issue referred to in the landscape section of the report. Clearly, there will be some habitat losses. Hedgerows will be lost in phases 1 and 3. They will be replaced by new double hedges. The yellowish area to the west of phase 1 will be developed as a species-rich meadow, a sill bunting habitat, and one of the settlement lagoons in the southeastern corner would be retained and enhanced for biodiversity value. So this is the office and recycling area that was coloured pink on the previous plans, access coming up from Brenton Road. You'll see it contains site cabins, stockpiles of materials for processing and crushing plant. Immediately adjacent to that will be a topsoil bund, and then immediately below that is the line of one of the public footpaths, which will cross the whole road, where the applicant intends to insert new pedestrian gates as a safety measure, along with field gates to allow cattle grazing on either side. Phases 1 and 2 to the north of Shillingford Lane. So for those phases, the vehicles will cross that lane using an improved crossing. There are gates there at the moment for the movement of cattle, but that access will be improved to manage the lorry traffic, bringing the waste to phases 1 and 2. And this is the main access on Brenton Road. So all vehicles will approach over the bridge over the A38, and then turn into the site in the left hand of those accesses, which is the location of the existing access. Vehicles leaving the site will swing around left on a new exit route to join the slip road leading up towards the A379. The green line on the plan is the extent of existing group of trees. So you'll see the new exit from the site will take out some of those trees. As you'll see now, the photographs, I would add all these photographs are taken either from public highway or from public rights of way, so they're all viewpoints accessible to the public. So this is the view coming over the overbridge, the entrance gateway you can see on the left, to the left of the sign, and the exit will come out near the existing road signs and join the slip road. There's a view into the gateway, which would form the inbound route, and the whole road then would cross that field with the recycling area beyond the next H line. And then the exit route would cross this verge and to join Slip Road, which is there heading up towards Frank Tucker Garage, the direction of Exeter. Again, part of the tree group on the left would be removed. You might see a very small blue sign on that signpost as denoting this is a cycle path sign, cycle route from Kenford towards Exeter, which is highlighted by a number of objectors. This is Shillingford Lane, which is a very lightly traffic lane, has more the appearance of a green lane rather than public highway. Phases 1 and 2 are to the right, so this is the crossing point for lorries bringing waste to phases 1 and 2. Obviously, during phase 3, it would no longer be used. Right, moving on to the landfill site itself. This is a view down the valley, the northern valley, for phase 1 in the foreground, phase 2 beyond. You can probably pick out in the distance the views down towards the estuary, and then Woodbury Common on the ridge behind. The hedgerow closest to the camera will be removed as part of phase 1 and then replaced subsequently. And then phase 2 would extend towards the hedgerow beyond. It's another view of phase 1, taken where the footpath crosses Shillingford Lane. The hedge running diagonally down is the one that being removed I just referred to. The hedge running across the photograph effectively is the site boundary. The public right of way is immediately beyond that hedge. And all of the land beyond the hedge is within the Peamore Park and Garden I referred to previously. The next photograph I'll show you is taken from that bridle path looking back to that point. Views across the site to the Holden Ridge. Again, the hedgerow to be removed is the one dropping down the valley. The land at the top of that field is the land that will be managed for still bunting habitat. And then the next photograph, you can imagine then you look to the left down the valley. So this essentially is phase 2 towards that hedge line. And then a final shot of phases 2 and 1. This is from the A379 looking back up the valley towards where the previous photographs were taken. And again, you can see the first hedge line is the extent of phase 2. The hedge line beyond is the one that will come out in phase 1 and subsequently be replaced. Moving across to the southern valley, this is the view from Shillingford Lane. Again, views of the Holden Ridge. You might have just pick out Holden Belt here on the skyline. The area of landfill is this side of the brownfield at the top. So the centre of that valley would be landfilled. The access from Brenton Road will come in at the left-hand side of the photograph with a recycling area in that next field. This is a closer view taken from the public footpath. The public footpath runs in a straight line from this gate towards the conifer at the far corner of the field, with the recycling area then to be immediately to the right of that, as looking on this photograph, with landfilling including part of this field, but a large part of the field beyond, looking up to the hedge line with the brownfield, which is also the route of the public footpath. Those who could eyesight might be able to pick out a water trough right at the top of that field. This is the view from that trough, looking the reverse shot, looking down the valley. So all of the foreground would be landfilled, to the ridges on either side, extending through that first hedge line into the next field, which is where the recycling centre would be located. Right, I've got a few updates to the report. The number of objections has increased slightly. So the number of objectors, because we have multiple objections from various objectors, but the number of objectors is now 702. A couple of corrections in paragraph 7.8 of your report. It referred to the quantity of net waste managed in Devon declining to a level in 2023 just above that in 2014, actually now below that in 2014. Paragraph 7.52 refers to an offer by the applicant to replace stiles with gates. Those stiles have already been replaced with gates by the County Council's public rights of way team. So essentially that offer's been superseded. Just to report on a couple of further consultation responses received since the report was published. The County Council of Public Health considered the additional information on health provided by the applicants, and they consider it's allayed their concerns. And the County Council's Public Rights of Way manager still has some concerns about impact on people's enjoyment of the public footpath, but not sufficient to recommend refusal, but he does request a condition in the event of planning permission being granted, secure details of any new gates and other arrangements. The recommendation before you is one of refusal. Clearly, as I said, this is a complex application with a wide range of issues, balancing the need for the landfill against the negative impacts. And we feel that in particular the landscape impacts and the impacts on the historic park and garden are sufficient to override any gains from additional landfill capacity. So the recommendation is one of refusal. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Members, I have 10 speakers wishing to speak today, which takes us to the maximum half-hour time allocated for evidence outside of this committee. So to all of the speakers, to save repetition and time, you all know already that you have a maximum of 3 minutes, and we will stick to that rigidly, because failure to do so will deny somebody at the end possibly not being able to put across their point of view. So with that, could I first of all ask Mr. Russell Loudon, the applicant, to come forward, please? Hopefully, Mr. Loudon, your microphone there is on. Obviously not. You go, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Russell Loudon and I manage BT Jenkins, the applicant.
Apologies, it's what I've got down here.
We are a local business specialising in earthworks. To build new homes, roads and infrastructure, large amounts of stone and soil are displaced which need to be disposed of in an appropriate and responsible way. We have an existing site just down the road at Trude Lane. This is now full, so there is a clear need for a new site nearby. After much consideration, this application for a new site in Lower Brenton presents a good opportunity to allow us to continue depositing soil locally, responsibly and sustainably. Despite operating for many years, the Trude Lane site is barely noticed by many locally. This new site can benefit from inheriting the same best management practices around vehicle access, noise and other potential impacts. The new site is so close that the routes our drivers use to access it will almost be identical to the Trude Lane ones. The vehicle numbers will also stay the same. People shouldn't notice a difference. I know this site and love this area. I grew up in Ede and I now live a stone's throw away from this site. Lower Brenton hasn't been chosen by mistake. It's been chosen because we believe it's suitable and sustainable for what we're proposing. I work closely with the landowners of Lower Brenton to work how these plans will not only allow them to continue farming, but to support the viability of the farming enterprise. And through ambitious restoration plans, including new Devon hedge banks and other offsets measures, we will return the small 15-acre section we'll be using to productive Devon farmland as soon as possible. There is significant need for this site as well, which we wholeheartedly believe in, with Trude Lane now full. If there isn't, I wouldn't be stood here today talking to you. Currently, soils locally to Trude are being transported out of the county to Cornwall and Somerset. Indeed, your officers in their report have recognised the need that exists for a new site like this one. As is recognised, there are other sites in the wider region and some in the locality, and others may come forward in the future, but that's the way the industry works. Different sites can often take different materials at different rates and from time to time. So to ensure we're matching waste and construction in the most sensible and sustainable way, the industry needs options. For the wider area to grow sustainably and flourish economically, the area needs a replacement inert soils, landfilling and recycling facility like Trude Lane to serve Exeter in the wider area. And with a clear focus for growth within the south of the city, firmly promoted by Teagrave District Council, it just adds up. We've worked and thought really hard about these plans. I know it would be a tricky decision for you, but I hope you can see why we feel this is the right solution. Thank you.
Much, absolutely perfect timing. As I get the names right. Could I now please invite Mr. Freddie Palmer, Unity Engagement Consultant, to come forward, please. Mr. Palmer, the floor is yours, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Freddie Palmer. I work for Meeting Place, who has been supporting the applicant engage local communities since 2023. When the applicant first phoned me, I didn't know if I could work with them on this. I'm a Devon boy, I've got friends in the area, and knew about this project because I'd heard some scary things about it. I spent an evening reading about it and slowly realised that through the noise and the confusion, all that we have here is a local contractor wanting to deposit some soil on a farmer's field. I visited the farmer and sat around their table as they told me all the countless personal attacks they'd received because of this confusion. I visited the applicant, I visited Trude Lane, and when I got there I realised that it was being restored to this green space that the public would be able to use. It didn't look like I'd pictured a landfill to look. It was a small area of land where some soil was being put, and the rest was already back to countryside. It's very rare in this game that someone will admit that they're wrong. When Peter Jenkins approached us, that's exactly what they did. They understood they'd failed with a previous application to properly explain it to the community. So we came along and we helped them change that. We spent hours talking to communities to explain plans, allay concerns, and ultimately made some really significant changes to make sure these plans were right for this location. We didn't win over everybody, of course not. There is significant opposition to these plans, and some of these concerns are appreciable. But I do ask you to remember that there are many thousands more who live locally who are not here. I've had countless conversations where once people understood what's really proposed, their concerns fell away. When people understood we chose this site because it's hidden in the valley from existing communities, that it was to replace one already going at Trude Lane. Most people didn't realise it was there, which I think does speak volumes for how well that site's managed. Even at the scary site sounding recycling facility was simply like a big tractor. There are more than 800,000 people living in Devon. The homes and infrastructure they need are dependent on supporting infrastructure, just like this. This isn't some evil conspiracy. This is a local earthworks business needing a new site to deposit soil. I know this is a tricky decision, but I encourage you to see through the noise and the confusion and back these plans. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Things like John Burgess, a landscape consultant from the applicant, please. Mr. Burgess, come forward.
Hello, I'm John Burgess, the landscape architect for the developer. The LVIA Landscape Visual Impact Assessment has been carried out using guidelines for landscape and visual impact assessment as published by the Landscape Institute. The scale of effect is a combination of the magnitude of the effect with the sensitivity of the receptor. Any mitigation built into the proposal may lower effects. Any significant effects can be moot in planning terms. Landscape sensitivity is derived by examining the baseline conditions and the value of the site and its context. I valued it as average because it has no national designations such as AOMBs and national parks, etc. And the published landscape character assessment for the area described it as moderate sensitivity. Mitigation is offered as 3 phases of development with bunding. These run in sequence for 2 to 3 years each and will be completed and restored before the next phase is started. The growing of existing perimeter hedges from 2 to 4 metres is also proposed to give greater screening. So the landscape effects. In table 8.1 of my LVIA, it lists the important characteristics from the published landscape character document. There are not high presence of these on the site itself, hence the average rating. The landscape effects are considered to be construction, operation, activity, and a general loss of tranquility. This is a temporary effect. Bunds that change character. This is a temporary effect. Management changes to hedges. These are a permanent effect, and changes to site levels. These are a permanent effect. Some effects were substantial at the operation stage. No landscape effects are significant in the longer term. The visual effects. Visual sensitivity is always about people at the receptor, not the receptor itself. The guidelines concentrate on public points of visibility. Viewpoints closest to the site have the highest level of change and were the most sensitive. Higher effects from these were proposed. Some effects were substantial at operation again. Viewpoints further away had distant views, with the site difficult to pick out, and there were lower effects from these. Overall, there were no visual effects of significance in the longer term. For Peamore Park, this is a protected historic parkland north of the site. Factors affecting the sensitivity of this landscape are a high ridge of wooded land occurs north of the site, with park and gardens south of this and out of view. The field between the woodland and the site has always been farmland on the historic maps. The landscape change at the interface of park and site is therefore temporary and will return to its
You have
original
15 seconds, sir.
The residual effects, once everything has been considered, the land use is returned to farmland, a field and hedge pattern is created, soil bunting habitat created, the land will undulate but less than before, and the views will be returned to farmland. No residual effects are significant in the longer term.
Much indeed. Dr. Sam Moore, Local Heritage Consultant. I think you do need to speak. I'm not entirely sure that's working particularly well, unless it's just for the benefit of the screen.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Sam Walls from South West Archaeology. The heritage concerns are very much focused about the impact from the proposals on the recently designated Grade 2 registered park and garden, or RPG, at Devon. All of the historic documentary evidence suggests that the estate of Brenton existed at least from the medieval period, and by the post-medieval period was referred to as a manor in its own right. Peamore to the north was a separate manor. But both sites have not been in the same ownership at any point. The site and has therefore never formed part of its parkland or of its core setting, which, given the position of the house, was very much focused on views to the north and east. The site, along with the agricultural fields immediately to the north, now part of the RPG, were all tenanted by the same gentleman in 1841, which would indicate that by at least the mid-19th century, the fields comprising the southern part of the RPG were solely in agricultural tenancy and of a different status to those immediately surrounding the rest of the house and gardens. Views out from this agricultural part of the RPG cannot therefore be intrinsic to the significance of the parkland and are at best incidental. Historic maps show much of the details of the historic gardens and its layout, particularly the rock. They also indicate that there was mixed woodland planting along the only path on the southern side of the rock, which would have, and still does to some extent, completely inhibit views out into the wider agricultural landscape, both the site and generally. Two viewpoints appear to be indicated out on the historic mapping from and around the rock. Both of these are looking out to the northwest and north, looking immediately around the landscape around the house itself. No viewpoints are indicated to the south looking towards the site, implying that the intention was to conceal and reveal the house in these views rather than the agricultural land to the south, which would have been best a borrowed view of agricultural land outside of the ownership and control of Peamore Estate. It would therefore appear that any views from the path to the south of the rock to the site, which seem unlikely, are more incidental than intentional and of significantly less importance than those to the northwest and east. The listing description for the RPG does not attribute a significance to the views out from the rock to the land to the south, and simply notes the rest of the immediate setting is largely agricultural land, formerly estate land. I think it's also important to consider that the proposals are ultimately temporary and will include the reinstatement of the site as agricultural land, and therefore there would be no permanent change to the status of the wider setting of the parkland in the longer term. Even during the operational phases, the workings will be obscured by grass buttons for the duration of each phase.
And 15 seconds, sir.
Which will greatly mitigate both the visual and oral effects. In summary, there would have been very few views out from the core of the registered park and garden of Peamore towards the site. The only parts of the RPG with views to the site are now, and have seemingly always been, open agricultural fields.
Sorry, but I am going to have to stop you. But thank you. Finally, For the applicant, can I invite Mr. Philip Higginbotham, please?
Thank you, Chairman.
Who is the agent? I believe I've got that correct.
That's correct, yes. Thank you. Good afternoon, members and chairman of the committee, and thank you for allowing me to address you this afternoon. My name is Philip Higginbotham. I'm the agent for the Lower Brenton Farm planning application and have local government as well as private planning consultancy experience specialising in waste planning matters. The planning proposal raises a number of technical planning issues. These include noise, air quality, drainage, ecology, human health, climate change and transport, as well as just 2 residual recommended reasons for refusal. These are the impacts on the landscape and the cultural heritage of the recently designated Grade 2 registered Peamore House and Gardens. We've assessed those effects extensively in our planning application, and our proposal has evolved over the course of its consideration, responding to comments received from those technical consultees and the community. The lack of objections from technical consultees and the planning officer to all but the landscape and cultural heritage issues are welcomed. This afternoon, we've heard from our landscape and cultural heritage experts, reinforcing that the landscape impacts are reasonably minor and mostly temporary, and the cultural heritage impact is low and of no substantive harm. Due to the distance between Peamore Park and Gardens and the proposal site, lack of intended views towards the site, and the use and higher topography of the intervening land. Those minor and mostly temporary impacts must be weighed up through the planning balance against the benefits of the proposal. These are the identified and accepted need for a sustainable inert soils recycling and associated landfilling asset, an improved and facilitated farming landscape and significant biodiversity benefit to the site and wider area. The proposal would provide that much needed asset to Devon's construction industry and the local economy. It's strategically positioned to facilitate the clear, present and sustainable growth of the Greater Exeter area that is being promoted by Exeter City Council and by Teignbridge District Council, with nearby mixed-use development proposals earmarked in its well-advanced local plan. The proposal would deliver a restored landscape not significantly dissimilar to the existing, and significantly more than in this case the non-mandatory 10% biodiversity net gain to the site. We therefore respectfully ask the committee to support the planning application and vote in favour of this much-needed sustainable development proposal, delegating authority to officers for approval. To that end, a suite of planning conditions and Section 106 legal agreement heads of terms concerning vehicle routing and payment towards the cost of a traffic regulation order and a commitment to using hydrogenated vegetable oil fuel for plant and electric plant on site has been agreed in principle with the planning officer. Thank you.
Indeed. Members. Mr. John Pearson. Mr. John Pearson is representing Kent Parish Council, is that correct, sir?
That's correct, yes. I'm the highway consultant. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully you've read my highway technical note submissions on the scheme, which were commissioned by Kent Parish Council. It's disappointing that Devon Highways have only commented on the applicant's transport statement and not on my counterpoints, which as a result has failed to fully appraise you on the decision you're making today. Whilst the recommendation for refusal does include a highway reason, I would encourage you to, does not include a highway reason, I would encourage you to seriously consider this. The main concerns are the likely impact on the villages of Kentford and Exminster, the danger to cyclists and all drivers using the A379 specifically, the likelihood of the site's HGVs attempting U-turns prior to the Marsh Barton roundabout. The 7 likely U-turn locations have a history of recorded collisions over the years, a fact unrecognised or even considered by the applicant or highway officer. The Highway Authority requests that the vehicle routing, and I quote, should be conditioned to prevent traffic associated with the site from travelling through Kentford, but fails to explain how, given there are no physical measures to prevent HGVs turning right out of this site. A no right turn is not sufficient. Perhaps the highway officer can clarify. On a recent refused application for a landfill site near Tiverton, the highway officer stated that there were no measures available to ensure HGV drivers adhere to the route proposed by the applicant. The same applies for this site. There is no mitigation profit for the 7 U-turn location on the A379, nor any HGVs running through Kenford or Exminster, especially when the A379 is congested. The highway authorities state that the new HGV movements will simply replace the Trude Lane site, but the 75 trips per day from Trude Lane dropped hugely over recent years, whilst traffic flows on the A379 and Marsh Barton roundabout have greatly increased, not including the vehicles from 2,500 new homes. The A379 between the site and Marsh Barton should have been closely assessed and the roundabout itself traffic modelled to determine capacity. Stationary queuing of vehicles heading north on the A379 will only increase the temptation for HGVs to attempt unsafe U-turns. There's been no consideration of the greatly increased dangers to cyclists using the A379, even though recent studies show that HGVs are more likely to be involved in a pedal cycle fatality than any other vehicle. The MPPF paragraph 116 states that development should only be prevented or refused on highway grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety or the residual cumulative impacts of the road network would be severe.
15 seconds.
The severe impact on congestion, air quality, and most importantly, highway safety, specifically non-motorised users using the surrounding rural road network, is contrary to national policies. I request that the highway reason for refusal should be included and the application before you today refused.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, could I invite Councillor John Parrott, Shillingford St George Council, or Parish Council?
Parish Council.
You're welcome.
And just say I'm also a Teambridge District Councillor for the ward as well. There is huge opposition and anger from local people about this application, and in addition, strong objections have been lodged by Teambridge District Council and the other affected parish councils of Ken and Exminster. We are not NIMBYs. We have accepted the nearby housing developments that are taking place in southwest Exeter. People are, however, rightly horrified by this application, which would see an industrial complex sited in beautiful rolling Devon countryside in close proximity to a community wood and listed Grade 2 park and garden. Our key concerns are Peamore Park is a protected historic site. The proposal would bring noise, dust and intrusive machinery literally to its doorstep. For this development to jeopardise such an asset is an insult to the values we hold as a community. The applicant claims that the project will operate in phases lasting just 2 to 3 years, ring hollow. These are speculative and contradictory to their own evidence. In reality, it is likely that our community would endure disruption and noise for far longer. Residents have already experienced the failure of similar traffic plans elsewhere, with HGVs diverting through our villages, causing congestion, noise and road safety hazards. This cannot be allowed to happen again. This development threatens our cherished countryside, the wildlife that depends on it, and the physical and mental health of our residents. Ancient hedgerows, protected species, our community wood and water courses such as the River Ken are at risk. If this development goes ahead, the loss of countryside and views will be profound. Irreversible damage will be caused to the rural beauty of the landscape and footpaths and country lanes currently enjoyed by so many people. The residents of Shillingford St George consider this proposal as a direct attack on everything we hold dear. Our heritage, our environment, our way of life. This is not progress, this is destruction. We implore the committee to listen to the voices of our parish and those of our neighbours. Refusing this application is not just a matter of policy, it is a matter of principle. We cannot allow such profound harm to the environment, to our community and to future generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Could I now invite Janet Lilly, please? Is residents against landfill neighbours. Floor is yours now.
Okay, I've lived in Clapham for nearly 40 years, and for the past 9 years, I've been walking on the 3 footpaths, bridleway, and quiet lanes surrounding Lower Brenton Farm on most days. So what's it like walking in the area now? The footpaths and bridle paths are currently across an undulating pastoral landscape, walking on grassy paths across fields and alongside hedgerows. There are longer views towards Haldon and the Belvedere Tower to the south and west, and the ex-estuary and Woodbury Common and Castle to the east. There is birdsong, there are rabbits, badger footprints, and the occasional sighting of deer. There's seldom traffic on Shillingford Lane, and the whole experience is of a quiet country walk alongside hedgerows and across fields, often meeting other walkers, cyclists, and horse riders. So what would it be like if the landfill went ahead? I'm concerned that the landfill site would alter this tranquil rural scene completely for the rest of my life, and probably even the life of younger path users, as history tells us that all landfill projects are extended. Quiet rural scene would be replaced by a noisy, bustling industrial landscape of buildings, diggers, HGV lorries, mounds of earth and rubble. The public rights of way may exist in theory, but they're proposed to be enclosed by gates, fences, and 2 to 3 metre high walls of earth, which will obliterate the views. It would be a test of endurance, not of pleasure, to walk on the dark and muddy paths. The proposals will also affect public safety. There will be many heavy vehicles crossing footpath 16. Shillingford Lane is currently a very quiet lane with very little traffic, where dogs are always walked off lead. That would change with the heavy site vehicles crossing the lane and the proposals to remove the important historic hedgerows. There are no options or alternative routes to avoid the dangerous mob grazing of cattle on the footpaths either. And in conclusion, proposals would devastate the landscape, which Teambridge Council have currently designated as an area of great landscape value.
Right, Aisha Lovell, please. Oh, you're there already. Well, that's marvellous. Residents against landfill members.
Thank you. Dear members, thank you for your time today. My name's Aisha. I've lived in Kenford my whole life, and my family has lived in the parish for over 500 years, so it's safe to say that I have good local knowledge. I'm here today to express my sincere wish for this landfill proposal not to go ahead. I have outlined all of my reasons within correspondence submitted to the council, but today my focus will be on the impact to the young people and families in the area. I have 2 boys, aged 6 and 13. Both have attended the preschool and primary school within Kenford. I am particularly concerned by the increase in traffic that will come from a landfill site in this location. There are no play parks locally, nothing outdoors to entertain children, and so you will find them playing in the road on their bikes and scooters. Older children cycle further afield, often over to the ice cream parlour for a treat and play in their meadow. Locally, there are no cycle paths and only a scattering of fragmented pavements. It is already dangerous to be a pedestrian or a cyclist here. The landfill access point at the end of the overbridge is in a dangerous position. If you know the area, you already approach this turn with caution. I would be concerned as to the safety of anyone passing such a busy junction, especially children. I understand that the desktop report provided by Highways has deemed there to be no issue with the position of this access point, but a desktop survey only considers fatalities. Locals will tell you of a lifetime of near misses here, an accident waiting to happen. Any congestion on the A38 sees Kenford used as a rat run, and councillors will already be aware of the ongoing issues with heavy goods vehicles travelling to the Kenbury Wood facility. juggernauts blindly following their sat-navs and driving through the villages and country lanes despite their designated route plans and the weight restrictions that were supposed to help stop them. These lost lorries with their landfill destinations are a significant danger to pedestrians and cyclists, and the community can take no more. I have witnessed on far too many occasions lorries getting stuck in the village, causing damage to parked cars, property, and putting people in danger. I have seen these lorries mounting the grass verge outside of the school in order to turn around. This is where our children stand, believing that they are safe from traffic. Councillors, I implore you, please keep the safety of our children at the forefront of your minds when you make your decision. Thank you.
Mr. Mike Elliott, residents against landfill 2, members. The floor is yours, sir.
A lot has changed since this landfill was first proposed. The amount of inert waste sent to landfill over the last 3 years is just a quarter of what it was in the previous 3 years that underpinned the application. The amount of waste managed now is at its lowest level since the Devon Waste Plan was adopted. The total permitted capacity in the county is now above the 2022 target, and 40% of that is in the Exeter area. And you will be considering a major extension to the existing landfill at Holmacott this afternoon. Most importantly, 1.5 million tonnes will now not go to landfill, as it will be used to restore Zigzag Quarry, just 12 miles away. Kenbury Wood landfill, less than half a mile away, has been extended to 2036, with over 300 daily HGV movements. In addition, every lorry leaving the proposed site, up to 100 a day, will use the exact same route, over and alongside the designated cycle path and up to the collision and accident black spot at Matford Roundabout. And the importance of protecting the unique setting of Peamore Park has been recognised through its listing last year as a nationally designated landscape. And at the same time, a lot hasn't changed since this site was proposed. The applicant could spend another 3 years and submit another 3,000 pages, but this site should never have been considered and fundamentally can never be justified. It is unspoiled rolling Devon countryside, recognised as an area of great landscape value, and that means something. It is why people choose to live here and why tens of thousands of visitors come here every year. It is why over 700 residents have voiced their concerns by submitting more than 1,200 objections, and some of those that could get in are here today. It has places for people of all ages to enjoy walking, cycling and horse riding, appreciating the tranquility and the open views. When asked for more information about the true impact on the landscape, the applicant reluctantly admitted that it would be substantial. They also shared the admission, I assume unintentionally, and I quote, "This is not really full compensation. This is not really full compensation for the loss of rolling landscape character, but the scheme is what it is. Omelets, eggs, etc." That just says it all.
Comment. I am correct in saying that you don't wish to speak now, but wish to speak in the debate, correct?
Chairman, I'm very happy to speak now.
I'm inviting you to speak as the local member now, if you wish to. It's entirely your choice.
Chairman, if I speak now as a local member and as the committee member, is that okay?
I think I'd be quite happy with that.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Chairman. That goes fine. I will speak. Sorry, longer than 5 minutes. As a member of the committee.
7.
Okay. I think I'll be inside 7, Chairman.
Yeah.
Chairman,
the time you councillor.
Chairman, before my time starts, at the beginning of the meeting, you invited members to declare an interest, and I'm just setting my stopwatch up. No. I should, in the interest of transparency, say that as a division member, county councillor for the area, I've been contacted by residents over the few years. I've never discussed with them the application, but have discussed with them planning process, and I've always reported that to the officer Andy Hill. I have been twice contacted by the applicant who's wanted to help me with any queries I have regarding the application. On both occasions, I've explained it would be inappropriate for me to do so as a member of the committee, and the call has ended without discussion. And on both of those occasions, I've also reported that to the officer Andy Hill.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. So I just get myself on to start now. You won't believe. Chairman, I want to thank the residents and the hardy few who have done so much to share information and comment to the County Council on this application, and also to the parish councils of Ken, Shillingford, St George and Exeter for their contributions. I have read the report with great care, considered all of the information which has been provided to me, including the various representations from interested parties. On the face of it, there is a need for additional inert waste landfill within the wider Exeter area, although the report before us recognises demand has varied in recent years. The conclusion appears to be that for the next 6 years, or so, there is capacity. Longer term, we cannot simply keep on shifting soil off-site. The greenest and less polluting solution is surely to look at how the soil is retained and used on-site. Inert waste should be moved as a last resort and not be the first option of choice. I therefore note in para 4.2 in the report that Cambridge Council referenced there is no advantage in providing landfill close to the EE2 housing allocation, which we saw on the plans which were shown earlier, because the council's policy, GP1, in their emerging local plan, seeks to minimise the exploitation of soils and limit this to contaminated materials. And I believe the report before the committee, this merited greater weight than it appears to have been afforded. At 4.11, the Gardens Trust, a statutory consultee for the development affecting any registered parking gardens, such as that at Peamore, submits a serious objection to the application, as does the Devon Gardens Trust, and these are supported by the Devon County Council Landscape Officer, who reiterated their objection on the grounds of adverse effect on views and rural character. And it is to be noted that the local and wider community is certainly engaged in this application, with a petition of 3,325 signatures received last November and 701 respondents to the applications submitting comments via the council's planning portal. I listened with interest to the applicant's environmental correspondent or consultant, and note that Kelvin Boot, the long-time resident of Ken Ford and lifelong naturalist, had set out his concerns about this application. He's unfortunately not been able to speak today, but does raise significant issues around the applicant's environmental credentials or environmental considerations for the report, I should say. Residents have also raised these concerns: road safety, especially concerns about the safety of cyclists. And we heard just a few moments ago how the lorries exiting both Kenbury Wood and Lower Brenton, if it's approved, would share the same road route as we expect cyclists to use. So it's not simply the lorries leaving Lower Brenton, if it were to be approved, but also Kenbury Wood, and that's not being taken into account. So that over 100 HGVs every working day are on that slip road. I was surprised that the Devon County Council Road Safety Officer thought not really a safety issue. Devon County Council Highways have ignored the previous concerns about the safety on the A379 approaching the Matford roundabout and discounting the extra traffic generated by the 2,500 new houses and the large school at Matford Academy. And on public footpaths, we heard slightly about the Devon County Council's public rights of way officer believing that there were concerns but not sufficient to object. Again, disappointing. Some of these matters are referenced in the report before the committee to a greater or lesser extent. My attention, though, was drawn to the comparison of lorry movements of 75 to 100 a day and the suggestion that in effect there would be no increase or a limited one at best because lorries have been going to the now closed nearby True Lane facility. The reality is that there is now more traffic on the A379 and will increase because of the housing, some 2,500 when the current development is finished. So with True Lane not in use, that would be 75 lorry movements less on a busy road. But actually it stays the same, so it is an increase. We can't pretend that it's simply the same. When True Lane stopped, you would expect the lorry movements to stop, so there will be more. In the new Cambridge Local Plan 2020 to 2040, which has gone through public examination, and we are advised that subject to modification is capable of being found sound and therefore worthy of significant weight, there is a new housing allocation at Peamore and the reference EE2. So whether we like it or not, the government has set housing delivery as a nationally important priority, and we should be most mindful of any application which will or may prevent homes being built to meet that national demand. In the objection from Cambridge Council, which is at Power 4.2, the planning authority says the development of this site would prejudice the delivery of homes as part of the EE2 Peamore and Wessex development allocated in the emerging plan. At 7.23, county officers say it's considered the likely timescales would not necessarily prejudice delivery of a proposed housing development. And it's those words, not necessarily, which suggest to us there is an element of doubt. Experience tells us that landfill sites will often have a life beyond the period of their original planning consent. Anecdotally, members of this committee will be used to extensions for landfill sites and other waste resources. There can be no assurance that if permitted, the Lower Brenton Farm site would not blight or prejudice the delivery of the major housing allocation. I therefore propose and seek a seconder that we add a further reason for refusal of this application, which is 3. The proposed development would significantly prejudice the delivery of the major housing allocation of EE2, Peamore and Wessex as identified in the emerging Cambridge Local Plan 2020-2040.
Councillor Connell.
Yes, Chairman. I've almost finished.
You have.
Almost finished.
What's almost? Less
than 1 minute.
That makes it 8.
Well, Chairman, it's good quality.
I think everybody else.
So Chairman, it should be mentioned that Ken Ford should not be the Exeter's dumping ground. I support the recommendation for refusal. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and for going slightly over time. I invite the seconder for my amendment and for the refusals.
I'll second Councillor Collins' item.
Councillor Connell, have you finished now?
I have. I've moved an amendment and got a seconder both for the amendment and the recommendations to refuse.
Chairman, before we proceed any further, Councillor Collins reminded me that I should have made a declaration at the start of this, and I think I need to raise that at this point. I suspect many of the other members around the table might be the same, but I've received a number of emails during the course of this debate that's gone on over a period of time. One of those included an invitation to attend an event. The emails I've simply acknowledged receipt. The invitation to attend an event on site I declined to attend. And as of about 10 or 15 minutes ago, I did not realise that I've had an email from a lady called Ella Hazleton, who was acting on behalf of B2 Jenkins. As it arrived late yesterday afternoon, I haven't had the opportunity to read it, but I do apologise for not raising those.
Councillor Sanders, as you acknowledged, and members, you will have all received, I'm sure, communications. If you acknowledge receipt of those, but not actually have answered them in any way, then I think that is perfectly fine. Right.
That's correct.
Thank you for
and that's
bringing,
not responsible.
because I think everybody on the committee will have had communication with various people.
My apologies, Chair, I should have raised it to the.
No, it's absolutely fine, accepted. Thank you very much. Members, I'm first of all going to follow the protocol today more closely. So before we go to debate, I'm going to open it up to questions to the team. Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I ask the exact nature of the material that's being proposed? We've heard inert material and soil. One of the speakers, a supporter, suggested it was just soil. But from what I'm understanding, it's more than just soil. So I just wanted to understand exactly the nature of whether or not, if this was given permission, additional materials could actually be put there. Because, for example, I've heard that incinerated bottom ash is inert material, and I wonder if that at some point end up being proposed to be put on the site, because if it had planning permission for inert material and inert waste material and storage.
The site as a whole would take inert waste materials, a range of materials, including soil, also including materials such as concrete, bricks, other construction materials that aren't biodegradable. The application has two elements: the landfill site, but also a recycling facility. The intention is the recycling facility would process the hard materials, or better word, the concrete, the bricks, into aggregates for use elsewhere. So the materials we deposited in the landfill would be limited essentially to inert soils, subsoil that can't be recycled or reprocessed.
Members, I would just suggest that I fully accept what you're saying, Councillor Hodgson, in the possibility of what might or might not. But I think I don't want to confuse the issue on what could be and what could not be. I think we need to just concentrate literally on the facts that have actually been presented. A perfectly reasonable question, but it could take us slightly tangent. Next question, members. Then there isn't. I'm prepared to open it up to debate. Councillor Coyne, I will invite you because you said you were quite happy to.
Chairman, I think I said all I needed to say, so I won't take up another 8 minutes. But it does strike me that one of the unique things about this report is the issue of the landscape. It will change the countryside permanently. I appreciate the applicant says we put that to sort of rolling pasture. But the sort of views, it is an area of great landscape area, which is not the same as an area of outstanding natural beauty, which is a national designation, but it's a local designation that English District Council put in its last local plan, or the current plan, in order to protect some of the unique and important views, particularly from Holden Ridge. And some of those pictures that we saw, you can see the kind of to die for views that you have out over those fields. Now, I quite accept that a landfill site will eventually come to an end and will eventually be remediated. And one of the questions I ask myself as a planning member, as well as a local member, is the destruction of the 10 years worth the gain? I have come to the view personally that it's not worth that gain, because actually there is no gain. It is beautiful as it is. It will not be more beautiful in 10 years' time. It may be as beautiful, we won't know. Some of us may not be here in 10 years' time to be able to make that judgment. But it is not less than beautiful now. It is perfect as it is. There is no need to do this. We also have the alternative, which is Lowerhead Farm, which is consented and permitted by the Environment Agency. Within the wider Exeter area, Teambridge, and in fact the Ken Valley Ward, has quite a number of sites in it that take landfill. There is no need to despoil Lower Brenton Farm. And so when the officer's report came through with that recommendation, I believe it's the right recommendation, but I do believe we also need to be mindful of the planning authorities emerging, as in now significantly weighted local plan because it's gone through public examination, and the impact that has on a significant housing development. In terms of significant, something like 900 homes are planned at EE2. So that is a significant proportion of housing that meets the national priority. So Chairman, I have no hesitation both in moving the amendment, which was seconded by Councillor Cox, and in moving the recommendation set out in the report. To my mind, it's the right thing to do.
Members, I'm very conscious of the fact that the report is broad and it's long and it's full of content. Much of that is actually centred around the environmental issues, whether it's the visual impact, whether it's ecological impact, the topography impact, etc. I would just suggest to you all that there isn't any form of development that doesn't change any one of those things. The proposal of 2,500 houses, I can grant you all, has a detrimental impact for somebody looking into it. So I think we need to be very circumspect as we look at this. Councillor Hodgson, I will be with you in just for a moment. I would just like to bring to your attention, so as you understand exactly what Councillor Connett has proposed and seconded by Councillor Cox. I'm going to read it to you so you know what is actually being proposed. The proposed development would significantly prejudice the delivery of the major housing allocation of EE2, Peamore and Westex as identified in the emerging T-Bridge Local Plan 2020 to 2040. I don't know whether you want to discuss that at this point. I think it would be relevant to do so. Give it some thought, pass the motion, and then that's the absolute.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm happy to support the recommendation and the amendment as well as proposed, which I think fits in as well. I have considerable concerns about this, not least of which is that I think the whole proposal seems to show to me a complete deficit of imagination in terms of what we do with materials that are actually really useful. What are we doing just dumping them when actually we've got such a loss of hedgerows in this county, and generally where we can actually, this is material to actually just restructure some hedgerows. A lot of the new developments are trying to do new developments. They don't actually have good materials to start with. So if a new development is having to clear land, then that material should stay on the site, be recycled on the site in a really appropriate and positive way. So I see actually that if by providing opportunities to just dump, it's just such a easy, cheap option rather than actually using our imagination to actually work in a much more sustainable way. Proposals that have been talked about in terms of the impact on safety, road safety, I think is very, very worrying. And I think the fact that has been raised that it's actually some of the elements of the report are somewhat misleading on this matter. I think that's a worrying factor. And I think that any development that is carting around huge loads of heavy materials is going to have a safety aspect most of the roads and local roads and rural areas. The landscape aspect, I think, is very, I don't think it's necessary, so therefore I don't think it should be happening. One thing that does concern me is item 7.123. It refers to a report by Cambridge District Council, apparently raising concerns over the removal of hedgerows that are potentially of historic value and suggests that development is therefore contrary, blah, blah, blah. Our response to that includes the statement, the northern part of the site, phase 1 and 2, had all pre-existing field boundaries removed in the late 19th century, while the sole remaining historic boundary in the southern part, phase 3, is likely to be post-medieval in origin. Given the loss of associated contemporary field boundaries in the surrounding landscape, this remaining boundary is considered to be of low significance as a heritage asset. The only remaining hedgerow is going to be taken out because it's considered to have no value. Well, visually, obviously it has value, but actually ecologically, it's now the main link for the wildlife. I mean, to just say it's got no value is unbelievable in here. So I'm very unhappy about this application, and I'm happy to support the recommendation of refusal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Have a recommendation by our officer on this occasion. I'm just thinking, Chairman, about that house development, which is on the English level. And if I was living there, would I have an idea about what's proposed for some lump of land that would be there under the like so of like the wells not funded. Chairman, I'm happy to follow my officers for our officer.
Councillor Chubb. Yes, I can see the need for landfill, but I think the main thing with the planning application is always what harm. I think there's more harm than there is good, so I'm quite happy to go with the proposal as well.
Councillor Sanders.
Thank you, Chairman. He'd start probably by saying that I knew people very well from a child when I was old enough to recognise things just outside of Exeter, and I'm towards the verge of tears every time I drive past it at the moment, because we went to that development land that's physically running the housing. And of course, grade 1 land is some of the best loan that there is in the county. So any development there has me twitching, I have to say. I do know this area quite well, actually. My father used to cover it when he was a representative on Saturdays and quite a look at it. I'm normally not too concerned about landfill sites, simply because if they're done properly, they can be restored. However, I think there is a point in this report which is valid, which suggests that it will significantly shape the land. And that actually is quite concerning, because this area is undulating grassland at the moment and has been for a long time, and it fits into that structure. Significantly moved by the Cambridge Council in saying that they do not consider it necessary, and indeed prejudice the development of some of their housing issues. And I think in terms of what Councillor Hodgson was saying, is actually they don't want to transport any soils or in fact any other material off-site from the development of that area. And that is the way we should be going. We should be reducing that as much as we possibly can. Banking the topsoil and reusing it, and trying to reuse the other materials that are available. So I think I spent a lot of time looking at this because it's a very large report, and we've had several reports before. But I think whilst I have sympathy with BT Jenkins, they are a firm which, again, I've known for most of my life, not actually any personal dealings with them. To expand their keep their business going. I think we have no choice in this case, Chairman. It's very recommendation from the issues. So I think it's the right decision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members, can I just draw your attention therefore to the amendment? I will tell you that I'm not overly comfortable with speculation. And speculation is probably what is in this amendment. Now, you may disagree with that, and I'm quite happy to take that, but suggesting that it may prejudice the delivery of major housing allocation, I'm not entirely sure that that is part of actually what we're being asked for today, and I'm just not comfortable with that. Councillor Connett.
Well, Chairman, I drew the amendment up reading the objection from the Cambridge District Council, which is on page 3, that says
yes,
development of this site would prejudice the delivery homes as part of the E2 E1 West development. Not me speculating, it's Cambridge District Council saying, Chairman.
Councillor Connett, I understand that. Equally, I'm still not comfortable with the fact that it is speculative in that process. There is a lot in this report, and the recommendation that you have in front of you is based on the report findings and what you've heard today and how you've discussed that. So I'm not entirely sure that it's totally necessary to add the amendment to this proposed to this recommendation. Nobody else is suggesting they want to put their hand up other than Andy Hill.
Thank you, John. If I could just address the additional reason of refusal, and would be helpful if we can back up the plan I displayed earlier. There we go. So the allocation that Councillor Court refers to is the area coloured yellow on that plan, which obviously extends beyond the plan. It does include one field to the west of the A379, which directly adjoins phase 2 of the landfill, which, just remind us, is the area coloured red. But clearly the site is much bigger than that. Teambridge's emerging local plan provides a housing trajectory which provides timescales for implementation of that development. I think commencing in 2032-33, with years of peak delivery being 34-35 to 37-38. So this is something in the medium to long term, not something that's going to happen tomorrow. The likelihood is that were the committee to grant planning permission for the landfill site, it will commence in the short term. We've heard from the applicants, their existing site at True Lane is closed. The site already benefits from an environmental permit. So the likelihood is that a start will be made, I would guess, within the next 2 years, if permission were to be granted. Phase 2 is estimated, well, phases 1 and 2 together are estimated to take around 6 years. So we're talking about potentially phase 2 finishing around about the time that a start is made on the Teambridge allocation. And clearly that Teambridge allocation extends much wider than the land to the west of the A379. So our view as officers in dealing with the Teambridge objection is that it wouldn't prejudice delivery of EE2 allocation because of partly the relevant timescales and partly the fact that much of the land in our view would not be directly affected by the landfill proposals. Clearly, once phase 2 is completed, landfilling will move on to phase 3, which is separated by, I think, at least 350 metres and a ridge in between. So were the allocation to be developed while phase 3 is ongoing, I don't see a problem in terms of prejudicing delivery of housing. So my advice to members in considering the additional reason is proceed with caution, as your officer's view is that the objection would not be substantiated.
Councillor Sanders.
Thank you, Chairman. Having known Councillor Connett for a considerable number of years, long before I think he or I became councillor, I have considerable respect for his views, and he often is quite astute at picking out things where we need to make amendments. However, I am always reluctant to start amending an officer's recommendations and the officer conditions on the hoof, as it were. And for me, this is a bit lengthy. I've not really had time to consider it thoroughly. And I'm assuming, no, I know, I'm not assuming, I know that our officers would have spent many hours working on the conditions and they would have reviewed them very carefully along with the supporting our needs department. Therefore, I think although with every respect to Councillor Connett, I think I would find it very difficult to put a recommendation for making an amendment along the lines that you stated. And I'm not supporting that.
Anybody else? In which case, members, I am going to put the amendment to you first. Do you wish me to read it out again, or are you clear on its wording? Clear?
Yeah.
Then I will, just for clarification, so as everybody understands. The amendment reads, the proposed development would significantly prejudice the delivery of the major housing allocation of EE2, Peamore and Westex as identified in the emerging Teambridge Local Plan Those against? Therefore, that has been defeated. I will therefore take you back to the original recommendation, which is on page 1 of your reports.
Move as set out, Chairman.
Sorry?
I move as set out.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Yelsey. I'll put this to the vote. Those in favour, please show. It's unanimous. Thank you, members, very much. Ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen at the back, as the majority of you, I believe, are here in connection with this item we have just discussed, you are most welcome to leave if you don't wish to sit through the rest of the meeting, but you are equally most welcome to stay. Can I, thank you very much for your contributions. Could I also, to anybody that intended to come to the last meeting and rearrange your times, can I just extend the, if it did upset you, and I was responsible for that, or standardly candid, but I hope that the outcome has been satisfactory to you today. So thank you very much. If you wish to go, now's an opportunity.
One moment, Chairman.
Sorry, could I just have a little stuff? I just, as a neighbour of the Lane, I have lived there 10 years. I actually drove up there and no idea it was even there. I don't see why it's your initial.
Right, all right.
Yeah. Members, anybody wants just to go use the facility? A less than a brief. Sorry.
If you look at some of that, so I was going to get you updated. Yeah.
Match no more, because they've got the report. I do appreciate that you probably have to lay your life aside a bit, a little bit more. So if everybody gets out to the guy, yeah. This one. You're going to take 75 hectares of beautiful land, one of our farms, not all land next door as well.
Don't know whether it might be easier to understand, then you can easily understand. And really?
I just think it's.
Yeah, so that obviously, I think it's a case of if you are softly spoken, the closer you are to it, you'll pick up all right. Okay.
You all right, Ron? Yeah.
They're not really.
Well, it was, no, that what was the first time.
But that was definitely a route.
Well, I did send you a communication. No, Claudia had a request. Been approached.
Well, I can sit. Can I sit? I can sit there.
I did send.
How did you go?
Sit here and be quiet.
Very well.
We'll just, we'll bring your mic to you, shall we?
Right, then, are we?
That's what you've got there, we can't let go.
This is North Devon District. Alison's going to give us a brief introduction to it. She says it's brief, 6 minutes max. I'm timing. Off you go. Turn the button.
Okay. Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. So Holmacott landfill site, it's depicted on the screen in the red outline, is an existing inert waste landfill and recycling facility between Barnstable to the northeast and Bidford to the southwest. The site is located just north of the A39, although there is no direct access to the site from this road. Vehicle access, as outlined in blue, is obtained from an unnamed road, which is an extension of Old Bidford Road, which passes through Ramswell in Barnstable. Planning permission for landfill operations at Holmacott was first granted in 1990, with applications for further phases and recycling and waste transfer permissions approved since this. Existing permissions for the site are due to expire in July of this year. As mentioned in the description of the proposal, there are three main elements which I'll take you through now. So the first of these is the consolidation of existing permissions within the site. For context, this is the area above the dotted line on the screen, consisting of phases 2B to 8, and covers inert landfilling, recycling, and waste transfer operations. The application proposes that the existing site has capacity to facilitate inert waste up to the end of 2028. The application also seeks for a lateral extension of the landfill site to provide approximately 575,000 cubic metres of additional inert waste capacity. The extension area is shown below the dotted line, consisting of phases 9 to 14, which comprises 2 agricultural fields of approximately 11 hectares. Further filling within both the existing site as well as the extension site is proposed to extend the life of the landfill of the site by 15 years, so up to 2040. The third element of the proposal is the construction of 15 aggregate storage bays, which will be located on restored land within phase 1, close to the site's access. And a new one-way access track is also proposed, which is shown on that plan. In terms of mitigation, the application proposes to allow existing hedgerows on the southern boundary to grow up to a height of 3 to 4 metres, starting prior to starting the extension site. The application also proposes a phased restoration scheme to minimise adverse landscape and ecological impacts to acceptable levels within a reasonable period. Once restored, the land is proposed to return to agricultural land, retaining the ponds that were created during the operations and introducing a new network of woodland, wet woodland and Devon hedges. So the next few slides show some photographs taken from the site. The first is taken from the landfill area, looking northeast. The next is also from the landfill facing west. And the last is taken from the southern boundary, looking south towards one of the 2 extension fields. A large proportion of the objections received during the consultation stages referred to traffic concerns on the use of Old Bidford Road through Roundswell by HGVs. The application does not request an increase to the annual tonnage of waste currently permitted at the site. It is therefore considered that the proposals do not result in an increase of vehicle movements to and from the site compared with the levels already permitted. What is being considered, however, is a continuation of traffic associated with the site for a further 15 years. The next few slides are taken from Google Street View and show sections of the proposed route heading from Barnstable towards the access site. So the first is taken just after the A3125 and Old Bidford Road roundabout and shows an informal crossing point. The next is taken further along Old Bidford Road near Cooper's Drive and shows an example of the road narrowing along this route. Similarly, you can see chicanes in this image, and the next shows the approach to Chews Lane roundabout. After this, road becomes a national speed limit with variable widths and a number of informal passing places before reaching the site access, which is shown here. It's clear that a large amount of development has occurred in the Roundswell area since the landfill site first opened. DCC's highway officer sets out within their response that new residential development proposed in the Roundswell area, which I note has recently been to North Devon's planning committee, where members resolved to approve the application. That has been identified as the more appropriate application for delivery of traffic calming and a formal pedestrian crossing within the vicinity of Old Bidford Road. Based on this, the highway officer has raised no objection to this application. The existing landfill is subject to a Section 106 agreement, and it is noted that the applicant has agreed to sign into a new agreement, which will continue a highways maintenance contribution of £5,000 per year, which will be index linked for the lifetime of the development. The funds will be used towards maintaining Old Bidford Road. I just have one update to note following publication of the report. So this relates to a neighbour representation raising concerns in relation to the timescale set out in the landscape and visual impact assessment. An update note has been provided by the applicant's consultant, confirming that the submitted LVIA did assess the impacts in relation to an additional 15-year time period, and as such confirmed that the conclusions within the assessment remain valid. So to conclude, as the only operational inert waste landfill serving Northern Devon, great weight is given to the continued operation of this facility and the significant reduction in transport distances associated with this. Taking into account the proposed mitigation and conditions, this application is recommended for approval as set out in the report and on the screen. Thank you, Chair.
Alison, thank you very much indeed. Members, I have 2 guests to speak on this, so can I invite Mr. Steve Bandy to come forward, please? He is the planning consultant for the applicant. Mr. Bandy, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Holmacott Landfill and Recycling Centre is operated by John Coles Contractors, a local family-owned business established in 1963. Matthew Coles, who is sat behind me, represents the 3rd generation of the family to lead the company, which employs 72 local people. We are seeking your support today to consolidate the existing waste management operations at the site and to extend its operational lifespan by 15 years, including a lateral extension alongside other improvements such as new storage bays. This is not a new site. Holmacott has been operating since the early 1990s and in its current form with integrated recycling facilities since 2004. What's before members is not an expansion in throughput or an increase in vehicle movements, but an extension in capacity and time to continue what is already happening in response to sustained local demand. The need for development is clearly established within the officer's report, and at its core, this application represents a pragmatic and necessary response to the pressing challenge of managing construction and demolition waste in North Devon. As the only operational inert landfill in this part of the county, Holmacott plays a strategic role. Without this extension, upon completion of the existing site, waste generated locally would need to be transported as far afield as Exeter, significantly increasing haulage distances, emissions and costs. Critically, this is also about protecting local jobs and supporting the local economy. Beyond direct and indirect employment of site operators and engineers, environmental compliance staff and HGV drivers, The site provides essential infrastructure to support local builders, civil engineers, highways contractors and developers, many of whom are small or medium-sized enterprises themselves based within the local community. Reliable local waste disposal and recycling options keep their costs down and operations efficient. We acknowledge that a number of objections have been received on highways grounds, primarily from residents of Roundswell, which has gradually expanded west towards Holmacott over the past 10 to 15 years. We would stress that this application does not increase vehicle movements. To support this, a detailed transport statement, including traffic surveys, was submitted. These show an average of 1 HGV every 6 minutes during operating hours. Even at peak times, it remains comfortably within safe limits for this type of rural road network. Devon County Council's Highways team has reviewed this evidence and raised no objection. Additionally, North Devon Council has recently resolved to grant planning permission for a further 220 dwellings west of the roundabout. That permission will be subject to a Section 106 agreement, which will deliver further improvements in the vicinity of the Tube Lane roundabout. Throughout the application process, we've worked closely with officers and stakeholders who've responded constructively to feedback and agreed to enter into a new Section 106 agreement to ensure an additional annual contribution to local highway maintenance. We've also committed to delivering significant biodiversity net gains and phased restoration of the land to agricultural use.
15 seconds.
Chair, members, this is a well-managed, long-standing facility that provides an essential public function. It operates safely, it supports local jobs, it underpins development, and it does so without creating new pressure on the local road network or amenity. We respectfully ask for your support today to secure the long-term future of this important site and the many benefits it provides to North Devon. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I now invite Mr. Ricky Clitheroe, who is a local resident and an objector. Mr. Clitheroe, the floor is yours. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I live in the closest residential property to the application. My house directly overlooks the site. Its current form, proposed conditions do not provide enough mitigation to reduce the impact to acceptable levels as per policy W12 and W18. The Devon Landscape Officer has stated the magnitude of visual impacts during operation, both in terms of duration and extent, is substantial. Such predicted harm to visual amenity should be weighed against the benefits of the scheme in the planning balance. Should consent be granted on the basis that the need outweighs such harm, every effort should be made to impose conditions that would limit the duration of operation to acceptable levels. The Landscape Officer has made these statements on the basis that the submitted landscape and visual impact assessment states the works on the extension site will take 60 months to complete, not 15 years. If the Landscape Officer's opinion is that the impact is so significant over a 60-month period, and there are sufficient grounds for refusal, then what will their response be for 15 years? The Landscape Officer has also stated a number of mitigation measures to help reduce the impact, none of which have been included in the current conditions. In fact, the proposed 3 to 4 metre hedge, currently conditioned, was rejected by the Landscape Officer as such a measure would be insufficient to reduce the magnitude of visual impacts. The 3 to 4 metre hedge cannot screen 10 metre high landfill activities with plant operating on top of that. The Landscape Officer has also stated that a condition is required on the existing site to reduce the large magnitude of visual impact through progressive phasing. Please note the existing site has been in breach of its current planning conditions for the last 5 years, where instead of following an agreed phasing, 4 phases are being worked on at the same time, and there has been no progressive restoration or visual mitigation. I've also raised a number of issues to the planning team with regards to the noise we currently experience. The noise limit proposed is incorrect. Submitted noise assessment has stated that the limit should be 51 decibels, which is 10 decibels above the background noise as per the national planning guidance. Why is the condition limit being set higher than that at 55 decibels? This is not in accordance with planning guidance or the applicant's own assessment or recommendation. If you are indeed minded to approve the application, I would implore you to understand the impacts of doubling the size of the site and adding a further 15 years time extension, bearing in mind as a temporary site, it has already been operated for 35 years. Noise limit should be set at 51 decibels, time limit should be set on the different phases, visual mitigation and progressive restoration conditioned on the existing site, and a woodland belt created on a bund, all as per the consulted expert recommendations and ensure adherence to the Devon Waste Plan. Without these, how can the report conclude that the current proposals were in line with planning policy W12, landscape and visual impact, and W18, quality of life? Thank you.
Mr. Clitheroe, thank you very much indeed. Members, Councillor Peterman is the local member, but we have not heard any comment from him. He's not here. So I'll open this to questions. Councillor Connor.
Thank you, Chair. When I read the report, I was quite happy to go with the officer recommendation, but having listened to Mr. Clitheroe, there seem to be a number of issues raised about the impact on him as the closest resident. So I wonder if officers can help us with that. But just so you know, I'm minded at the moment to suggest deferral so that it can be brought back at the next meeting with conditions which may help mitigate the impact and support. I've no objection to, in principle, the application, but I've heard from Mr. Clitheroe, and it seems to me I can't see the assistance or recognition in that for him. So can we have from the office?
There's a number of issues there that you sort of raise. Can you be specific and ask the officer to try and respond to those?
Well, the issue would be that the noise. The other points I think Mr. Clitheroe raised is capturing some of the concerns around the impact of the operation of the site on his home.
Okay, so in terms of start with noise, so national planning guidance does refer to 10 decibels above background levels. However, it does also say to avoid implementing fixed thresholds, as some circumstances may justify small variations, and in any event, it shouldn't exceed 55 decibels, which is why in this case, I have recommended 55 decibels as the maximum at any noise sensitive receptor. It's not just for one property, it's across all the noise sensitive receptors. In terms of progressive phasing, there is condition number 30 does set out A to G progressive phasing. So within the extension site, when they move into each phase, they would then start restoring the previous phase, and they wouldn't be allowed to move into the next phase until, so say in 9, which is the first extension, they can work in that whilst restoring the existing site, then they move into phase 10, restore phase 9, and they can't move on until each one has restored kind of behind them. In terms of the landscape comments, the landscape officer referred to the 2 to 3 metre topsoil bund as not providing substantial mitigation. However, this wasn't in reference to the 3 to 4 metre hedgerow, which is the mitigation that's being proposed. Yeah, I think it's any other points of clarification.
And the other one, Chairman, and I hope I remembered it rightly, which was a suggestion that the applicant is not always good about observing the conditions.
Yes, so so we annually monitor sites, and there were concerns raised with the phasing. We knew that it was working outside of the phasing order that was within the existing permission that currently stands. The recommendation following that meeting and those discussions were that a variation was needed to the existing site to allow a workable phasing, which is what part of this site is. That's the consolidation of existing phases and a rephasing. And then obviously within this application as well is a separate lateral extension. So there's kind of the first part and then the extension part as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
I'm happy to move the opposite recommendation.
Thank you very much,
Chairman, but I would like some reassurance in terms of policing of the site. My division is not far from here, South Morton's a great ball collies, and last few years, not 2 or 3 years ago, we were having and it was just purely, they weren't adhering to the site. Most important, that policing of the site is key, so that we get some reassurance.
That's yours, Andy.
Yeah, it's been explained that the site is currently operating under planning permissions, I think dating back to around 1993 or it was the 1990s, under 7 different permissions. What this application gives the opportunity is actually to strengthen those conditions and apply it to the whole site, which is the schedule of conditions now proposed. So that will certainly improve the enforceability, and as I say, the conditions together will allow us to enforce against nuisance, whether that be dust, whether it be noise, other impacts, probably more effectively than may be the case when relying on all conditions. So yeah, as I say, part of it is getting a modern, up-to-date set of conditions reflecting current practice. So it's going to be more confident in being able to take enforcement action if that proved necessary.
Councillor Sanders.
Thank you, Chairman. And whenever I see words like consolidation of existing planning conditions, I get nervous because we've been called out at least a few times in the past. In the sense that I just want to be clear that what we're doing is actually bringing together. My understanding is if we do that, then the effective date of those commissions are the date of the new consolidation. So just as long as that's not going to create any problems. And my other question is, I note that there's 15 bays for aggregate, and that suggests to me that there must be an awful amount of stuff which is capable of being recycled to need 15 bays, because the sort of stuff you're going to get out of the recycling, out of the crushing, the recycling, etc., you're not going to get 15 different types of material. I'm just wondering why that is so expensive, and whether that's going to result in other stuff being imported into the site in order to maybe that is covered by one of the conditions and I haven't spotted it, but I just think 15 is an awful lot. So consolidation, is that going to leave us exposed in the future? And why 15, which is quite, it's going to be significant relative to the construction.
Yeah, well, I'll do the consolidation issue. As I explained, that the different phases of the landfill, currently different applications as is the recycling operation. What this will do is have one planning permission covering all the existing operations plus the extension with a new end date for all those operations to expire. And the legal agreement that the applicants agree to enter into will effectively revoke all current permissions. So there's no misunderstanding as to what permissions the site's operating under.
That's signing an agreement to revoke.
Yes, it's
not here in this authority, but elsewhere I've had issues with that in the past.
Yes, it'll make it clear that there'll be one permission to work to one end date. Yeah.
So my understanding in terms of the aggregate storage bay is to extend the area they have to work recycled material and the area that they currently do for that, and to expand it so they've got more space for that as well. And also it's close to the access, so if vehicles going in to collect from there, it's also not going into the main part of the site.
So is there a condition that, sorry, I'm speaking locally, is there actually a condition which prevents any other material being brought in those recycled, in those bays? It will only be what is crushed and separated on site. I probably missed the condition, my apologies if I have done. My memory is not as good as it was.
My impression of the report was that the bays themselves weren't necessarily going to be separate aggregate or separate.
I mean, you normally separate 803 from something else, wouldn't you, if you were really start crushing and recycling, but you only pick up from most stuff that comes in, the most recycling comes, you only pick up 2 or 3 commodities really close. You wouldn't, for instance, pick up sand, whereas that's quite remarkable.
I think it's possibly an unanswerable question.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't currently a condition on the schedule preventing the importation of materials. I'm not sure whether the applicant will be willing to accept such a condition, or whether his intention is that materials be imported for resale.
My purpose, Chair, is the fact that that could potentially create additional traffic.
Yeah.
That's not the point.
So in other words, it comes down to the monitoring, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, at the moment, there isn't a condition that says they can't. Well, in fact, they should have been sat in the building plan and put it on site to do that, having people coming by.
Yeah, I can see the issue. What I would suggest, if Councillor Sanders is concerned with that, he suggested the addition of a condition to prevent importation of materials.
I would certainly take the officer's advice on the matter. I would think it would be sensible. I wouldn't like to have a go at getting the wording, because I'm absolutely certain I get it slightly wrong. But if the officer feels it's not an unreasonable condition, then it's capable of being maintained, because we can't set an unreasonable conditions, as we all know.
Might I suggest that in view of that, because this recommendation has been proposed by Councillor Yabsley, I am prepared to second it, that in that proposal, this clarification of condition can be inserted in, is that possible?
Yes.
Inserted into the conditional planning after this meeting. Would you be content with that?
Chair, it's not for me, it would be for the proposer to say whether they're prepared to accept it. I would certainly be content with that, yes, but I think.
Councillor Yabsley? Fine.
That's I'm happy, Chair, to propose it, is that I am.
I'm content. I've got Councillor Trail first.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I ask what's happening with the enforcement of the issues that have been raised by the resident? Because if the issues that have been raised and have been told to rectify have not been rectified, what have we as a council done to support the resident in the fact that we've got a person who's doing the work but not working within the guidelines or all the rules? I would not like to see, though, is to close down the site and lose employment. At the same time as that, employees have a responsibility not only for their employees, but also for the people that surround them. So the question is, what's happening with the enforcement, please?
To be fair, actually, Councillor Trail, this was answered earlier on, because the new set of conditions will actually revoke the old, and that process will then be down to the council for enforcement. Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Chair. I spoke earlier at a previous meeting, a previous application, about the need really for us to be recycling these materials on the site. And I think the more we just allow access to landfill sites, extensions of landfill sites, the less we recycle. I mean, we found this was only really when landfill, the domestic waste started to become so difficult to find that recycling started to really improve. And I think it's going to be the same with these materials. And I really understand the need for new housing, and I absolutely support that. But I do think that we can push for these new housing estates to actually recycle the materials on site that they generate. I was involved in some planning work in Dublin in the mid-90s. It was high-rise flats being taken down, and the whole initiative there was about recycling and reuse, and they managed to reuse that material on site. The new development went on, and I think if they did it 30 years ago, we can surely start to push for it to be happening now.
I fully appreciate
So
what you say, and I don't think anybody's going to disagree with you.
Okay, I said therefore I would not be supporting this application.
That's absolutely fine, but what you're actually sort of talking about is another issue completely. In that, it's not something we are looking to decide today, but I take your point, and you are not incorrect in everything you said. Nobody else. Sorry, Councillor Whip.
Yes, I do see these kind of applications, use of
rural landscapes as a necessary evil associated with our continued building, regrettable but necessary. My question really is, I believe the applicant in his remarks said that if this extension was not approved, there is no other capacity in the North Devon area, and that the result would inevitably be that materials would be driven up to some considerable distances as an alternative. And I just wondered if officers would comment on that. Is that your perception? Also with the situation in North Devon, is that what we are facing?
Yeah, so this is the only operational landfill site in North Devon. I say North Devon, I include Torridge within that, but yeah, there's no subsidy in Torridge. So this is the only operational landfill site. I think the next closest one would be anything currently operational Exeter. And certainly, yeah, I'm aware of the discussions with county council colleagues working on the recent North Devon Link Road proposals, for example. We're finding great difficulty in finding locations to take their waste other than Holcott. So yeah, it is an important site in catering for waste from northern Devon and avoiding it being transported greater distances. And just to touch on Councillor Hodgson's point, I mean, this is an integrated facility that recycles as much as it can. It's in their interest to recycle as much as the waste, because otherwise anything goes on the landfill site, obviously has to be a landfill tax. So if they can recycle material and sell it, they will do so.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Can I speak?
Carry on.
Yeah. I have a landfill actually in my division, which has been extended. And what we have is a liaison group where we meet probably every 3 months with a Devon County officer and flag up any issues that we may have. So the surrounding parishes are also involved in that and feed in to any, so you have a voice. Residents will have a voice, whether it's noise, dust, odours from the site, and that works well. We also get invited round the site so we can look at the mitigation measures put in to see that everything's being done correctly. So to actually appease the residents, it would be a good move forward. Whether they have one, I'm not sure. But it works well for us because in the 2 wards, we can smell the odours or dust and to make sure that they dampen down and all the rest of it. So that's what I'd like to add from my point of view. As was extended further, but they do mitigate and they do listen to us. Thank you.
Councillor Beard. Anybody else got anything to say? With the amendment that will be decided later, I'm going to put the recommendation to you for the vote. Those in favour, please show. Those against? That is carried. Thank you very much, members, which takes us on to item 7. Down purpose is going to take us. Some of the members, in my absence, were able to go and do a site visit to this particular issue. The recommendation is on page 83. Dan, it's over to you. Oh, well, I got a change. Sorry, Sarah.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
me. Okay, so this is an application for the creation of a new cycle and pedestrian multi-use path and associated works, land to the west of 1875 between Sidford and Sidbury. So the application was deferred by February's committee for a member site visit, which was undertaken on the 25th of March. But I'm going to run through the presentation again because not everybody was at that committee. The cycle route to be delivered is about 710 metres in length and connects with Sidbury in the north and Sidford in the south. And then to the north in Sidford, you can see that it connects into Hillside, which is a small residential area, and then to the south it's Two Bridges Road. So this application is for the first phase of the cycle route, and it's shown in the light blue on that plan. It will connect, it's proposed to connect into future cycle routes. So at the south, it would connect into a cycle route which is part of an existing permission with a two crossing proposed outside of this application because it would limit development. And then at the north end, you can see the darker blue line where it is proposed that there will be a future phase to connect into Sidbury. The connection into Hillside would remain, and that future connection is included as part of the current planning application separate to the one in front of you. Okay, so this is the detail of the cycle route. There is a crossing of Ottery Lane through the centre of it, and there are field accesses that do cross the road, across the path. It is bounded by a hedge bank to the west of the path, and then on the eastern side there's a hedge and verge. The plan also shows the signage that's proposed to be delivered as part of the planning application. And then just a few photos for those that weren't able to attend the site visit. This is Two Bridges Road, where a two-cone crossing is proposed to cross that road, and that will be located just beyond the car that you can see in that photo. This is the hill up from the A375 into Hillside. And then this is continuation of Hillside, and at the far end of that road, you can see the hedge where the path will connect into Hillside. And then the final photo, this is coming from where the path would connect at the hedge that was just shown, and then the Hillside goes around the corner and down the hill as shown on the first photo. So the recommendation for this application is one of approval, subject to the conditions included within the appendix.
Thank you, Sarah, very much indeed. Members, I've got 2.5 people wanting to speak on this one. Councillor Hughes first.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and thanks for allowing me the opportunity to once again speak today, and following the committee site visit to briefly present the case again for Sidford to Sidbury cycle and pedestrian multi-use path. For those who weren't at the previous Development Management Committee, when it was agreed to go and take a look on site, I mentioned that one of the first issues I got involved in on getting elected to the County Council way back in 1993 was the first ever section of the cycleway in Sidmouth, which ran through both the National Trust and East Devon District Council land, known as the Byes. It took around 2 years to be agreed and built, and at that time I made it known that I wanted to see the cycleway footpath continuing to first of all Sidford and then to Sidbury, and over the years each section through to Sidford was built in stages. This required a lot of land negotiations and necessary local transport plan funding. The advantages of what has been constructed is that it provides safe travel for cyclists, walkers, and also wheeled users away from the busy Sidford Road A375, which leads into Sidmouth and carries up to 9,000 vehicle movements a day. It's also used by many students attending Sidmouth College. Now, the young people who attend the college continue to raise two issues: the lack of the cost of public transport and a safe cycle and walking path between Sidbury and Sidford. And I believe that one of the representations received by the LC Whip consultation was from the Sidmouth College students calling for this much needed multi-use trail. The A375 without a footway between the villages has been deemed unavailable for young people to walk to either Sidbury School or Sidmouth College, and that was way back in the 90s when traffic was a lot lighter. And as a result of that, Chairman, the school transport has to be provided by the authority. This scheme is now a top priority in the LC Whip that was recently approved and adopted by Cabinet. And I believe that we should also include a further W for wheeled in LC Whip, making it the local cycling, walking and wheeled infrastructure plan, because there's a lot of people in mobility scooters that also use these paths. This scheme isn't just about cyclists, and there's a further stage which a developer of a proposed housing scheme will be required to deliver, taking the route into the centre of Sidbury. Chairman, members of the committee, no stone has been left unturned by our officers in finalising the application that's in front of you today, and all the questions raised and objections received have, I believe, been answered. Recently, we actually carried out an extensive flood alleviation scheme on Two Bridges Road, which frequently got flooded on the A375. Yesterday and this morning, early this morning, we had 40 millimetres of rain and no flooding was recorded. So it seems that the scheme is actually working. I therefore hope that the committee will give a green light for this much needed multi-use trail this afternoon. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Hughes, thank you very much indeed. I'd like to invite now Councillor John Loudon, who is a Sidmouth Rural Ward member for East Devon District Council. Mr. Loudon, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Committee, I'm the District and Town Councillor for Sidbury. I live in the village and I've previously lived at Hillside in Sidbury for 17 years, so I have good local knowledge. I shall address 4 issues related to the application. The first is around Two Bridges Road. I question how one could get safely from the Laundry Lane intersect to the Pelican Crossing outside the business park site without walking along the busy A375. The District Council approved planning application for the business park, conditions for a safe multi-use path along its front parallel to the A375. But 6 years on from this approval, the site remains undeveloped. Indeed, the approved site plan does not allow its intended pathway to exit where the Pelican Crossing would be located. This is literally, frankly, no joined up thinking. Additionally, I see no evidence that the approved vehicle entrance to the business park site has been considered when citing the crossings located. Does the committee know where that exit is? If you don't, it's on the plans that were approved. Secondly, Hillside. All through Hillside, it will be unsafe for path users as they will need to share the narrow single vehicle width path with moving vehicles and in part up a very steep road. The only section of pathway in Hillside has residents' vehicles parked struggled across it. You've seen that on the photo. This means that the road is the only pathway through Hillside. Indeed, on your recent site visit, your minibus had to park straddling the pavement outside Hillside House at the top of Hillside. You did what residents must do daily. You blocked the pathway. This forces path users onto the road. That is unsafe. You saw for yourselves the unsafe way path users would have to get through Hillside. On the day, several residents spoke to you of their concerns. And at the last meeting, Rich Allen, a local resident from Hillside, spoke to you as well. At the bottom of Hillside, vehicles enter from the A375, having to take it widely and without sufficient vision to be safely aware of anyone coming down Hillside. This is unsafe for path users, and the path users then exit onto the busy A375. Thirdly, the phase 2 pathway. There is no guarantee that a planning application for this will be approved. If it isn't, then phase 1 will be an underused and an underused folly. It will sit as an island with a path through it. I invite you to look at creating a mini master plan to create a joined up, safe, continuous path. Sadly, this is just one element and you can't do it on its own. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed.
I raise a point of order, please, Chair. I was a member of the site visit, and although I think the officers might have heard some residents, I think the rest of the members of the site visit, in accordance with proper protocol, did not enter into a discussion with the relative, with the resident. I'd just like to make sure the record is correct, because the gentleman, I think, possible, I'm not sure whether Mr. Hill or other members of the opposite card might have spoken to them, but as members of the site visit, we were quite careful to follow protocol and not get drawn into a discussion.
Very much. I have Councillor Trail who wants to speak first, but before I do, before he does, I'm content to propose this as it stands. Councillor Trail.
I'll second it. Basically, we attended the site, and I thank all members who attended that particular day. Apologies to the residents for the lack of understanding of our contractor to park on the pavement. But I think that's because of other vehicles that were parked up there, which should have been there. So apologies for that. However, with the Toucan crossing, a number of councillors, including myself, went down to that particular site. I stepped out the meters left and right. There was clear visual access to the road. With regards to the hedge that was on the site, in the actual plans here, that hedge would be taken away. And as you all noticed on that particular day, that particular plot of land is up for sale for redevelopment. This to me is quite clear. It's taking young people who wish to walk through the countryside, and in wheelchairs, off that busy A375, 9,000 vehicles a day plus. So moving up into Hillside itself, the top part where the hedge would come out, most of those residents in there have got off-road parking, and then the access would obviously at this particular time until the phase 2 comes about. They would then go back on to what the East End District Councillor said, goes back onto a busy road. So he's acknowledged that it is an unsafe busy road. So therefore we are actually doing something, which I would also point out, this is one of our highways plans throughout the whole of Devon, is to try and promote active travel with regards to walking and cycling, and with the mobile scooters. That's going to help those people who can't actually get out. So I would support this recommendation, and again, thank you all for coming that today.
Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up on what Councillor Saunders said about people speaking to us. I was actually addressed. Sorry, I've got the wrong glasses. Sorry. Anyway, yeah, I was addressed by a resident. So in terms of what the gentleman said about people being speaking, I didn't actually. I just said thank you. I actually was addressed by a resident who did bring some issues, my attention, but it was not a conversation. But I was just going to pick up on what Councillor Trail just said. I agree with the points he's made. That's the first point. And I think I really welcome having new cycle routes coming in, because people talk about the problem with parking with excess cars. A lot of people have second vehicles because they actually haven't got any other way of getting to perhaps often local jobs or local places. They need to drop the kids off, take them to college, whatever. I think the more we have these non-vehicular and safe routes, albeit they may be short at the moment and maybe needing some improvements, it just gradually bit by bit chip away at the need for second vehicles. And so many roads are clogged up with vehicles because people, have perhaps 2, sometimes even have 3 vehicles at their homes, because that's how they have to deal with not having access to public transport or safe non-vehicular routes. And so bringing these in, I think, is a positive, and it gradually will change the way we travel, in back to more healthier ways. So I welcome this now, by supporting the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. I've got Councillor Chug, followed by Councillor Witt, and then Councillor Sanders.
Yes, thank you. I know the report, the Sidmouth College, any kids going to college or students going to the college currently have to go by bus. Parents take them in the car. So I think it's an ideal thing to have this route, because I know myself, having children at a school, it's quite nice to drop them off in the morning or get them to school. They can make their own way back in the afternoon. If you can't get, but even better still, stop buses and stop cars, let them walk, let them cycle. And also people who live in Sidbury, they can then choose to cycle to work or walk to work or take their stroller or whatever they want to do, skateboard. So I'm fully behind it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Witt.
I just wanted to say that at the last meeting, the representations that were made on behalf of the residents of Hillside were concerning, and gave the impression to the committee, or certainly to myself, that there were serious safety issues that needed to be considered. And I felt that this was certainly an application which we benefited considerably from having been and looked at the site and being able to make our own judgments about the relative safety of the residents, drivers and weavers, pedestrians, cyclists, if this scheme was approved. And having seen it, I was certainly reassured that the issues that had been presented to us were, let's say, a worst case scenario. I felt that what we actually saw was pretty quiet road. Yes, with quite a few parked cars, but I personally had no real concerns that there was a safety issue if users of the new route were exiting down that road at Hillside. I came away very satisfied that this was something I could approve and support, and that the benefits were considerable. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to go look. I think that was helpful, and as a result, I'm quite confident that this is something I can support and will be voting to approve. Thank you.
Councillor Sanders.
Chairman, thank you for that. Very much following Councillor Whitton. I know that there are occasions when we get criticised both by the officers of this authority and indeed some members of the public about the expense of going on the site visit. I have to say, if anyone was in any doubt, this is a classic example of how the site visit helps. I hadn't predetermined the application, but following the last meeting and up to the point I arrived on site, I was at that point predisposed voted against it, not predetermined but predisposed. After the site visit, I am absolutely clear in my mind that I will be supporting the recommendation. The site visit, even if it did cost the taxpayers a bit of money to get us there, it was absolutely worth it, Chairman.
Thank you, councillor Santos. Councillor Pear.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I too attended the site meeting and was reassured because I attended the meeting that I could see for myself that there was a major benefit to having this footpath. Even the people who live there now will also have the benefit of using that all the time in the winter months if you want to get to wherever you want to go. So for me, I was reassured, having seen it. We went down to the bottom where the Toothman Crossing is going, and I was more than satisfied that it was a benefit to get people off that road. We've got a similar scheme we're putting forward in my division, which I'm really pleased about, where there's very little footpaths. So I would support this.
Very much. Nobody else has indicated to speak, members, so I'm actually going to put this to the vote per the recommendation. Those in favour, please show. That is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Members, that takes us on in the agenda to 8A and 8B. Self-explanatory. I don't think anybody's going to have any issues with that. And it actually does virtually draws to the end of the meeting. But as you know, this is the last development management meeting in this 4-year session of the County Council. I would like to take the opportunity to thank all of you members, current and some of the past that have sat on here but moved to other things, just to say thank you very much indeed for your contributions throughout. It's not the easiest thing in the world, and you don't always get to please everybody all the time. However, the evidence we're given often actually makes it a lot easier. I would also, members, on your behalf, like to thank the planning team and everybody that's associated with actually convening what we do here. Without that knowledge and expertise, we'd never get it right. I can guarantee to you that. Some people might not think we get it right anyway, but in the majority of times, I think we do. So I would like to say to Andy and his team and everybody involved, wishing Brian the very best because he's leaving us permanently tomorrow. All the best and thank you members. It's been a real pleasure to be your chairman for 12 months.
And Chair, it would be remiss not to thank you, your chairman. Mostly on the floor, but we've had our moments. What I say to you is I've always enjoyed the jazz. So thank you very much. I don't know what retirement looks like for you, Jerry. I think you'll miss us on May the 2nd. You'll wake up and you'll just think, oh, golly, I wish I was there. Thank you so much. Close the meeting. Thank you so much.
Can I